It's always nice to appreciate Ray Stevenson's legacy, and now the strikes have come to an end, we're hearing more about the creative process behind the Ahsoka show, and now Dave Filoni in 2 new interviews, one with Entertainment Weekly and the other with Vanity Fair, has paid tribute to Ray, and has answered some major questions about the character of Baylan Skoll. Are we going to see him again? What does the ending of Season 1 mean? All of our lingering questions since Ray's untimely passing. Let's take a look at what Dave said. We're just going to focus on the important bits, and we start with the ending, the statues of the Mortis gods. We've broken this down and spoken about this a dozen times. Baylan standing on the hand of the father that is pointing to a shiny beacon. Immediately, when we saw this, our brains went to the Clone Wars Mortis arc. The father, the daughter, the son, and theories were rife. But Dave acknowledges, not everyone who saw the Ahsoka show would know this connection, not everyone has seen the animated shows and understands the implication here. And as such, he tells us we have to be careful with that. Let's not make any assumptions and jump to conclusions straight away. He wants to put emphasis on the surface level imagery as well as the deeper Star Wars lore. Here is the quote. I know it's a very specific group of people that would even know what those statues are, but I thought it was an exciting image, and it does give you the shape of what Baylan is after. So what I gather from this, Dave is trying to have his cake and eat it too. But when they do eventually come to it, I'm gonna go out on a limb and say this could have one of 2 major implications for how he explores this mystifying aspect of recent canon. Either he does it in a vague and interpretable manner, or he does what he and Favreau tend to do when furthering Star Wars lore. Add components that are brand new to both diehards and casuals, build something from scratch that contributes to what we already know. That way, if you're not familiar with the Mortis arc, at least you're given something novel and concrete to sink your teeth into. That's how I see it. There are lots of examples of this, but if you take the Mandalorian as a prime one, we knew a lot about Mandalorian culture and tradition from the Clone Wars series, from Rebels, in the expanded universe as well, in Legends books, in Knights of the Old Republic. But going into Season 1 of the Disney Plus show, you didn't need to know anything. They gave you the context from the start, and introduced new concepts such as the Children of the Watch, the Tribe, new characters like Paz Vizsla, the Armorer. They could do the same for Mortis. Despite what we think is already established in the animated shows, we still know very little about the nature of those deities, those entities. But he is trying to achieve a symbolism on surface level terms too. Vanity Fair go on to say this. To Dave, Baylan and Ahsoka Tano are 2 sides of the same coin. They're both seekers, and Baylan is someone wrestling with the memory of what he was taught and the subsequent disillusion that has set in. There is a certain grief with his mindset. He's not fully moved on from the Jedi Order, and it's also why I resist calling him a villain. Filoni said this. He's a person that survived the Clone Wars, that was trained in the waxing, waning days of the Jedi Knights, just like Anakin. He saw everything he knew, his order, his way of life, fall apart. It is not something he deems worthy of resurrection, which is why he tells Shin, I didn't teach you to be a Jedi, I taught you to be something more. And they clarify in this new exclusive article that something more is rooted in the Force version of deities. So even though the 2 are now separated, her purpose in the eyes of Baylan could have been tied to the mother, being a body, a physical vessel for that kind of power. And fans are now desperate to know, when are we next going to see Baylan? Are they going to recast? And when is the next stage of this journey going to be explored? Well, Dave Filoni now answers that. They say this. Filoni isn't sure what will become of Baylan in Stevenson's absence, but he acknowledges that the character's journey is not complete. Obviously, there's a story there, he says. We're in a wait-and-see pattern at this point, but I'm glad the conversation is about Ray and how great he was. I used to have these mini debates with him and say, look, you are the villain here. And he would respond, no, I don't think so. I was like, I know you don't think so, but you are. I love that you're playing it like you're not. And in that process, that is when Filoni realized that is how Baylan thinks as well. Good is a certain point of view, and Baylan certainly does not think what he's doing is a villainous act. From his perspective, he is saving the galaxy, finding the beginning, ending the cycle of pain. So Dave here gives a lovely fitting tribute to the gentle giant Ray Stevenson. Baylan was the most outstanding character, Ray gave the most phenomenal performance. It is such a cruel, untimely, unfair situation. I mean, what a talent, a beloved friend and human being to many. I'm just glad to see the fandom kind of unite over the fact that he was one of the best characters Disney Star Wars has given us. We've been robbed of more of his performances as Baylan. His story was just getting started. I would have adored to see what he would have done in Dave Filoni's movie on the big screen, maybe a final showdown between him and Ahsoka. They need to do his legacy justice, continue the story Dave has mapped out, even if that does mean recasting. He clearly has a plan for him. And throughout this interview, throughout this Vanity Fair piece, you get the impression the likes of Dave, Rosario, and Hayden want a season 2, but it's Lucasfilm holding back. It's Disney and Lucasfilm who are saying, let's just wait a moment, take our foot off the accelerator. I don't think Dave is too worried, because whatever doesn't get put into Ahsoka season 2, he's gonna include in his film, which just based on this interview alone, is his priority. In other Mandoverse updates, my good friend Emily, you know Emily Swallow, the armorer herself. At Fan Expo in San Francisco, she addressed if a character is going to return in the 4th season. We assume she will. She honestly doesn't know. She has real hopes the character is going to be featured, and how working alongside Katie Sackhoff's Bo-Katan was the biggest highlight out of everything she worked on. Mando Season 1, Book of Boba Fett, and The Mandalorian Season 3 where of course, she shined. She went on to say this, I have no specifics about what direction this next season is going off into. I love the armorer so much, and I love especially this last season that she and Bo sort of defied expectations, working together, and I love that. I love that both of them were so willing to look outside of these very strongly held beliefs to see what was going to benefit the Mandalorian people as a whole. If we're going to Mandalorian Season 4, guys, I'm sure we're going to see the armorer. She is central to the story. But maybe less in Season 4. An appearance in a couple of episodes would be wonderful, any more is just gravy. But Emily does go on to say she would be fascinated to see how this new combined Mandalorian society plays out. What else is the armorer getting up to now? Emily says, quote, what does she do now that she doesn't have to drag her forge to different planets all the time, now that she sort of has a home base? While once again mentioning she has no verification, no certainty on whether she's going to return, she did kind of tongue-in-cheek say, Din Djarin has to check in with her from time to time. That's been customary in the show. I'm sure he's going to visit Mandalore every once in a while. And then Emily brings up a very good point, ironically something I mentioned when Season 3 was airing, an unlikely connection between the armorer and Grogu, because it was when Grogu came to a forge, when he was hearing the clanking, that we see the flashback to Order 66, and Emily wonders, the next time Grogu comes back, are we going to see some more flashbacks either from Din, as we saw in the first season, The Night of a Thousand Tears and Book of Boba Fett, or more from Grogu in Season 4. But she also mentions because she is a Mandalorian, and even though Din Grogu is now, he still was a Jedi, traditional enemies, and this is something Emily wants to see more of, saying, quote, she chose the directive to protect the foundlings above that, so I feel as though there is a deep connection between the two of them, and she also teases that she floated the idea to John and Dave to explore more of the armorer's personal relationships, and maybe in the same way Din now has Grogu as his apprentice and son, that she gets her own apprentice. I just want to know who the armorer was during the days of old, during the Clone Wars, the mystery of her backstory. Emily is a gem. You guys know I absolutely love her character. She is also wonderful as a human being, as a fan. And so with that said, my dear friends, that brings us to the end of today's Star Wars news update. Did you have fun? Did you enjoy this one? Make sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video.